The world speaks in whispers. I am but a vessel for those who cannot shout. Stories come to me. They follow me like shadows. I do not seek them. They find me and I carry them, as one might carry the weight of twilight. My name? It holds no meaning here. Names are for those who anchor themselves to places, people, and time. I am none of these. My purpose is the tale. Yours is the listening. Anyway, you can call me Duskwalker. The night was quiet. Too quiet, some would say. The kind of quiet that presses against your chest like an unspoken truth. I was there as I always am. At the crossroads, where choices are made and lives turn on fragile hinges. The air was thick, heavy with whispers that weren't meant to be heard. Shadows moved, not with the wind, but with intention. And then he came. He was weary. I could see it in the way his shoulders slumped, like he carried the weight of every road he'd traveled. Dust clung to his boots, telling tales of places he'd been, and places he'd hoped never to return to. He hesitated, standing at the edge of that intersection where paths crossed, converged, and disappeared into the unknown. His eyes darted, searching for something, or perhaps someone. I didn't speak right away. Silence can be louder than words, if you let it. The flicker of my cigar's ember caught his gaze, the faint glow cutting through the darkness like a beacon. Slowly, cautiously, he approached. And when he reached me, I gestured for him to sit. A table between us. 2 chairs. Nothing else. He sat, though not without hesitation. You see, hesitation is the language of fear. What is this place? He asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. I smiled, not the kind of smile you'd find in polite company. It was the smile of knowing. Of understanding something he wasn't ready to grasp. This, I said, is the crossroads. And I am its keeper. He flinched, as though my words carried a weight too heavy for him. Keeper of what? He asked. And that's where the story truly began. You see, at the crossroads, the choices you make aren't just yours. They ripple outward, affecting lives you've never met, paths you'll never walk. I told him as much, my voice steady, deliberate. The crossroads isn't a place, I said. It's a moment. A decision. A bargain. And the stranger you meet here is the one you least expect, the one who knows the parts of you you've tried to bury. I leaned back, letting the smoke curl lazily around me. So tell me, traveler, what brings you here? What is it you seek? He froze. It wasn't the kind of freeze that comes from the cold. No, it was the freeze of realization, the moment you understand you've stepped into something far greater than yourself. And yet, he spoke. Words poured out, desperate, trembling. A story of loss. Of regret. Of a choice he'd once made and the price he now paid. I listened, as I always do. And when he finished, I told him the truth. You cannot undo the past. But the future? The future is born from the choices you make here. I leaned in, my voice low, steady. So tell me, traveler, what will you give for a second chance? The crossroads, you see, isn't just a meeting place. It's where souls are laid bare, where bargains are struck, and where the stranger in the shadows always has the final word. The traveler's hands trembled, resting on the splintered wood of the table. The glow from my cigar flickered, catching the desperation in his eyes. He wanted that second chance, I could see it, but the Crossroads doesn't offer charity. No, every bargain has its cost. What do I have to give? He asked, his voice breaking. It's the question they all ask eventually. And my answer was the same as it's always been. Something precious, I said, leaning back into the shadows. Not something you hold in your hand, but something that holds you. A memory, perhaps. A dream. Piece of your soul. What you offer will decide what the Crossroads will give in return. He swallowed hard, the weight of my words sinking in. The wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of rain, though no storm was in sight. I'll give, he began, hesitating as though the words themselves might shatter him. I'll give my name. Now that caught my attention. His name? It wasn't a typical offer, but there was power in names, more than most realize. I studied him, letting the silence stretch out like the shadow of a dying day. Your name, I repeated, my voice low, almost a whisper. Are you certain? He nodded, his resolve sharpening like a blade. I don't want it anymore. It's tied to everything I've done, everything I regret. Let it go. His voice was steadier now, as though speaking the words had already lightened his burden. The Crossroads seemed to hum, a faint vibration that only those who've been there would ever notice. I leaned forward, letting the ember of my cigar briefly illuminate my face. Very well, I said. Your name for another chance. But understand this, when you leave here, no one will remember who you were. Your past will fade, not just from your memory, but from the world itself. Do you still agree? He hesitated one final time, the weight of the choice hanging in the air. And then, with a nod, he sealed the bargain. The Crossroads always takes what it's owed, and it gives what's asked, though never in the way one expects. I watched as the name slipped from him, an intangible thing carried away by the same wind that whispered through the trees. And when he walked away, he was no longer the same man who had arrived. He was no one. And yet he was free. Such is the way of the Crossroads. It gives, it takes, and it leaves you changed. But remember, freedom comes with a price. And the price is never what you think it will be. Perhaps he found peace in the anonymity. Perhaps he didn't. The Crossroads does not grant happiness. It offers change, and change is rarely gentle. And so the traveler walks still, his path unwritten, his story forever tied to the choices he made that night. The Crossroads gave him freedom, yes, but it also took, as it always does. Such is the nature of this place, of the bargains I keep and the tales I tell. Remember, my listener, the Crossroads does not erase. It shifts, it transforms, and it waits. What you offer and what you receive are mirrors of each other, and the reflection, well, it's not always one you'll want to see. This memory reminds me of another tale. A tale of a town lost to the echoes of silence. They called it Black Hollow, though none can say why. It was a place tucked away from the maps, where the roads became whispers and the trees stood like sentinels guarding secrets. Black Hollow wasn't empty, but its people carried an emptiness within them. They spoke seldom, each word measured, as though speaking too much might break a fragile thread holding their world together. It was said the town had always been that way, quiet and withdrawn. But the truth? The truth lies elsewhere. They say Black Hollow changed after the clockmaker arrived. He was an older man, hunched and weathered, with hands skilled in crafting time itself, or so he claimed. He built a shop at the edge of town, its windows darkened, its door creaking like a breath caught in a dream. And then he began his work, building clocks that didn't just mark the hours but bent them, shaped them in ways that defied the natural flow of life. The townsfolk didn't understand, but they were drawn to the clockmaker and his creations nonetheless. He offered each of them a clock, one tailored to their desires. One woman received a clock that stopped whenever she was angry, granting her time to calm. A man's clock sped up during his labor but slowed when he rested, prolonging his leisure. They marveled at the gifts, at the way the clocks seemed to listen, to adapt, to know their deepest wishes. But gifts like these don't come without cost. The clocks didn't just bend time, they began to alter it. The woman found herself unable to feel anger, even when injustice burned around her. The man could no longer labor, his clock driving him to rest endlessly, his life wasting away in languid days. Soon, the entire town seemed caught in a web spun by the clockmaker's creations. Time grew sluggish, then frantic, then still, as though the clocks were stealing moments, fracturing them into splinters. One night, the town fell silent. Completely silent. No whispers, no wind, no ticking of the clocks that had once ruled their lives. The clockmaker was gone, vanished as if he'd never been there. His shop stood empty, its door ajar, revealing only darkness within. And Black Hollow? It remains frozen, untouched by the world, as if time itself forgot it. So tell me, listener, would you take a clock if it promised to give you what you wanted? And if you did, would you be ready for the price it demands? After the clockmaker vanished, and the town fell into its timeless stillness, travelers sometimes found their way to its edges. They would report strange things, the faint ticking of clocks coming from nowhere, the oppressive weight of the air, and the shadows of people who didn't move. Those brave or foolish enough to step into Black Hollow never emerged the same. Not because they were harmed, no, but because of what they saw. One man, a merchant, spoke of seeing the townsfolk, frozen as if trapped mid-action. A child reaching for a ball that hovered just out of reach. A baker caught with his hands mid-knead, flour forever suspended in the air. Their faces bore no fear, just quiet resignation, as if they accepted their fate even before it came. The clocks that had once adorned their homes still ticked softly, yet the hands did not move. Time had stopped playing by its own rules. Another woman claimed to have heard whispers in the silence. Faint, fleeting voices that seemed to come not from the people, but from the clocks themselves. She swore one voice called her name, and when she turned, she saw a clock with her initials etched into its face, a clock she had never owned. She fled before it could strike the hour, though no one could explain what might have happened if it had. Then there's the story of the scholar who sought to uncover the clockmaker's secrets. He delved into the forgotten shop, a place that seemed untouched by the stillness outside. It said he found a journal there, the pages filled with strange symbols, sketches of gears that moved against all logic, and cryptic notes. Time is an illusion, and I am its master, one entry read. The scholar didn't leave that shop, at least not in the way you'd expect. When others found him, he sat perfectly still, his eyes wide, staring at a clock that no longer ticked. He remained there until the wind took him. What wind, no one knows. And what of the clockmaker, you ask? Some say he was never truly there. A figment, a fragment, a distortion of time itself. Others believe he wanders still, offering his creations to those willing to pay the price, leaving behind a trail of silence and stillness. Perhaps he is a shadow of something greater, or perhaps he is merely a man who forgot that even time has limits. Black Hollow remains, untouched by the world. The roads leading to it are faint now, overgrown, but the rumors persist. They say you can still hear the clocks if you stand at the edge of the forest. The ticking grows louder the longer you linger, pulling at you, daring you to step closer. But beware, listener, time is a bargain you cannot break. And the clocks? They are always waiting. So tell me, would you dare seek Black Hollow? Would you listen for the clocks, or walk away before their whispers found you? The hour grows late, and the shadows deepen. As you step away from this threshold, remember, the stories I share are merely mirrors, reflecting what you already hold within. Carry the weight of these truths carefully, for what you find in the dusk may change the way you walk through the dawn. Until the next crossing, wanderer, farewell and fare wisely.